Afternoon and welcome to the Virginia Bar Association Quarterly Practice Management Advisor webinar. I'm Paul Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the VBA. It's my pleasure to welcome you this afternoon. We have a great program for you today. It's the $1,500 mobile lawyer. This is where you can practice from anywhere. This is a program that's designed to set a budget for you, to set out what you need so you can practice from just about anywhere. And joining us today to give the presentation is our friend at Affinity Consulting, Jeff Schoenberger. Jeff, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. Let me go ahead and share my screen and I'll get started. The materials have all the slides and some additional stuff, so don't feel like you got to write everything down madly. I did add one or two things that came out in the last month that we'll talk about a little bit. So I'll tell you when that slide comes up. I always like to mention when I do these that we've got some great resources available on the bar's website. So take a look at those. And I do know we have two additional webinars coming up, one in September and one in December. So check out the website and stay tuned for emails on those. So when I gave presentations like say 5 or 6 years ago about the ability to work outside of the office, I would usually spend about 10 or 15 minutes, about a quarter of the presentation, describing what the benefits of being able to do that are. I don't feel like I have to do that anymore. I think we've all learned that over the last 3 or 4 years. Just even now, when you look at the numbers you see for people that have largely returned to the office, it is not 5 days a week. It's most of the firms that we talk to are in a hybrid model, usually 3 days in, 2 days out, something along that line, or maybe flip it. And in many cases, they're actually looking to downsize if they've got a physical office still, which a lot of them do. They're looking to downsize their physical plant, and so they're even scheduling teams. So if you're in a firm where you've got different departments, maybe litigation comes in Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and estates and corporate come in on Tuesday, Friday, so that they don't need the space that they would have needed 5 years ago. So there's a lot of the ability and the encouragement. And I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, maybe even over the weekend, about remote work, and people valued that at roughly an 8% salary raise. So you think about 8% of pay or 8% of compensation, that's what it was worth to be able to work from home, work remotely, that sort of thing. So keep that in mind if you're looking to hire folks, what that might be valuable for. So we're trying to avoid, spending money on things that we no longer need. And we do have a paper on the bar's website, but I'll just save you the time of reading it. With very rare exception, I would always argue for a laptop. Maybe a tablet, we'll talk about that in a minute, but certainly a laptop. That gives you the best balance of being able to go somewhere else and work, have your normal programs, normal web browser, things like that. And you get the functionality of what would traditionally have been a dock. We still have docks, but they're much easier to use and they're kind of cross-platform anymore. So you don't have to like match, as you would 15 years ago, match an IBM dock to an IBM ThinkPad or something like that. So we're going to think about and describe here a few different ways that we can spend, as Paul mentioned, and as the title kind of gives away, somewhere around $1,500, give or take. There's a little bit of flexibility in the sense that I'm not really counting all of these, the software you might necessarily have to buy. There's some of that in there, but for example, if you're looking at Microsoft 365, you're somewhere in the 8 to 32, depending on the features you want per person per month. If you're looking at Adobe Acrobat, you're at about $20 per person per month. If you're looking at Google Workspace, I want to say it's in the 6 to 12 range, somewhere around there. So I didn't, figure all that in and say, here's how many years you can use Microsoft Office, or here's how many files you can store in Google Drive before you hit $1,500. But we're gonna be around there. We are not playing fast and loose, but we are having a little bit of flexibility. We'll start with talking about core tools, and of course that always begins with hardware. As I mentioned, I would default to a laptop. Whether you're Windows or Mac, I think has probably already been decided for you. Either it's what you're comfortable with, it's what you're used to. I don't really see necessarily a huge benefit to changing. The only reason I would say that you should change from what you have or what operating system you're using now is if you've decided to go out on your own. And so maybe you have an iPhone and an iPad and you're going to go out on your own. I might lean towards a Mac. There are a lot of things that work well together if you stay within Apple's ecosystem that you wouldn't get with, say, a very nice laptop like Lenovo ThinkPad X1. You're going to miss out on some of the things like the integration between the iPhone and the computer. But generally speaking, if you're using software that runs on the desktop and it's legal specific, it's almost certainly going to be Windows specific. A lot of that we're seeing migrate to the cloud for subscription purposes and remote apps and things like that. So there's more opportunity. If you were kind of leaning toward a Mac, there's more opportunity than there was in the past. But if you're still using, say, a child support calculator software, I expect that probably runs only on Windows if it's a desktop app. So I got the two brands down there. The left side, you're looking at a MacBook Air M3. You can get I think the M2 is still available, and the M2 I think starts at $1,000 maybe. And this is kind of unique because I don't think Apple's ever done this before. You can actually go to Walmart and buy a MacBook Air M1. So get 2 generations off of what you go to the website at Apple and buy now. And it's something like $700, which is a pretty darn good deal, especially if most of your data is, if you're using Clio or Rocket Matter or my case, one of these cloud-based programs, and most of your files are stored in Dropbox or in the document storage that comes with your Matter management program. I think I want to say it was like 8 gigabytes of memory and 256 gigabytes of storage. Not what I would buy for a, full-time use, but especially if you're mostly document prep and you're not doing, video or depositions, it'll certainly be able to handle web meetings and the things like we're doing now. So that's something to consider also, and that would get you in at basically half the price of what the M3 is going for that's on the slide here. On the Windows side, I've always been a fan of the ThinkPads. The last Windows laptop I bought for myself was an IBM ThinkPad, which if you search in Wikipedia, you can figure out how far back that is. That's almost 20 years, I think, maybe even 20 years. Always love them. They're still great. They're still basically designed in North Carolina, somewhere around Raleigh. They're, of course, manufactured overseas, but really great stuff. Those are coming in at about the same price, $1382. If you knock the specs down, of course, you can get it a little bit less expensive. And so if you were looking for something that would be equivalent to that Walmart special on the Mac side, you could probably get it for probably around $800 or $900, I think, going through the Lenovo website. And instead of having the latest generation, you get the one with 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage, that sort of thing. But again, if you're doing mostly cloud stuff, that's probably sufficient. This is one of the slides that I've added since the materials went up. These were released, they were announced probably a month or so ago, but you can actually buy one and have it shipped to you now. And these are what Microsoft is terming Copilot Plus PCs. And so these have additional artificial intelligence capabilities, mostly on the microprocessor, built into them. So Windows 11 that's coming out soon, the update for Windows 11 obviously still already out, but the update that's coming soon will have a bunch of AI features that take advantage of these and let you run essentially mini AIs on your computer as opposed to relying on the cloud. And someday that might be a situation that plays really well for some legal software in the same way that a lot of folks are still nervous about solely using cloud storage. A lot of folks understandably are nervous about putting client information into any AI tool at this point, although legal specific ones are generally written with the understanding of who their customer base is, and so they're better. But if you just went to ChatGPT and threw something in there, it's fair game for them to keep and do whatever they want with. So Copilot Plus PCs are sort of an umbrella identity. They're not just made by Microsoft. The one I'm showing here is the Surface laptop. Lenovo has some of these PCs. I think Dell, HP, all the big manufacturers do. Here's the primary difference between a normal Windows laptop and one of these Copilot Plus PCs, and that is that these Copilot Plus PCs are running a microprocessor that isn't Intel, it's not AMD, it's from Qualcomm, who probably makes the modem in your cell phone, for example. And one of the advantages of using these Qualcomm, and they've got brands, I think it's called Snapdragon, something like that, is that they turn on and turn off and are as battery efficient as your iPad, and you probably don't charge that every day, or your cell phone, and you probably charge that every day because you use it a lot. And if you've used one of the new, 3 years now, used a MacBook that has an Apple processor as opposed to an Intel processor, like you pop the lid open and the thing comes right up and a battery lasts like 15, 20 hours. That's what these Qualcomm processors do on the Windows side of the fence. So if you're looking for a Windows laptop, that might be something to consider. The one kind of catch, though, if you're going to go down this route, is that not a lot, but some of the software doesn't work with it. Now, the big ones do, like Office works with it, of course, it's from Microsoft. Adobe works with it, Dropbox works with it, web browsers all work with it, but there are some odd catches. So for example, right now, because these have only been out in the wild for basically a couple weeks, Google Drive doesn't work with it. So if you're a Google Drive user, you got to keep that in mind. So if you're thinking about going this route, and these start, the 13-inch one, which is what I'm showing on screen, start at $1,000 or $999. So it's definitely within that sort of $1,500-ish umbrella. And if you like the long battery life, you like the instant on, you're not using, well, I wouldn't call Google Drive esoteric, but you're not, generally speaking, using things outside the mainstream, it might be something to consider. If you're thinking down the road, like 3 or 6 months, there's some indication that some future models of these might have cellular modems built in. So that would be super convenient, especially because you won't have to find the coffee house Wi-Fi, and then we'll talk a little bit about whether the coffee house Wi-Fi is the best secure way to do things. So this is a third option. This particular slide, not in the deck, but if you're interested, look for Copilot Plus PCs running Qualcomm or Snapdragon as the branding microprocessors. There's also the possibility that if you're feeling more adventurous, or you've got a decent desktop setup, or you are almost exclusively cloud-based in what you do, then it's possible that you could get by with something like an iPad. And the iPad comes in pretty inexpensively. So what I'm showing on the screen here, I don't actually show the pencil, but what I'm showing on the screen here would run you $677. So that's for the entry-level iPad. Perfectly good, great, does a great job. Keyboard that you see there is about $250, and then I don't show you the pencil, but the pencil's $80. If you wanted to have a cellular iPad, which is the way I prefer it, because tethering, you can do it, it's kind of a pain, I don't like it, drains the cell phone. That adds an extra $150, so that would bump you up to about $830, give or take. This is not going to be a full laptop replacement. So keeping in mind, or a full desktop replacement for that matter. So keeping in mind what you might want to do when you're out and about. If you basically want to do email with a real keyboard, but maybe you also want to do some light Microsoft Word editing. Word, either on the iPad or the web-based version, doesn't have all of the features that we would go through and talk about as being advantageous for an attorney or a legal professional, but it's got enough that you could certainly go through and you could do track changes and stuff like that. It's not a big deal. Adobe's got an app for the iPad as well. So if you're in that subscription model for Adobe, you get that and the full features of that as well. So it's generally pretty capable. Certainly, if you're going to be visiting clients, if you got a client population that's in nursing homes, or you go to them because they got used to that during COVID and they don't want to give that up, they don't want to drive down to your office, these are certainly capable of notes and stuff like that, and great solution. And then later we'll talk about a few remote access apps. So you could have a desktop or a laptop that's at home that's turned on, or at the office and turned on, and then you can remote into it through the iPad. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. But this is more adventurous because you would be changing how you do some of the stuff that you would normally do in Word, for example, or in Acrobat. But you do get some really nice portability out of it. And if you go with the cellular connection, you, assuming you're not in the middle of Moab, Utah, or something in the out in the adventuresome area, you will have cellular capability and cellular connection, so you have internet connection. For phone calls, just about any of, say, the wireless earbuds that you probably have lying around, they'll work fine. I still prefer the AirPods that you see there in the center. They're 129 bucks. Thing I'm using right now, if it shows up on camera with the background, is it's a Jabra headset. I think it is the 55, something like that, if you want to know the model number. It works really well. The big distinction between using any of these headsets, or I'm sorry, any of these earbuds and this thing that I have on, apart from the fact that this thing costs like 300 bucks, is that this has a range of, I don't know, 400 feet or something. So if you're on conference calls instead of video and you like to get up and walk around and do it that way, one of these with that, what is it, DECT is probably the way to go. But if you're out in mobile, you're probably not going to be wandering away from the laptop or the iPad that you have set up that's your base for your call. In which case, anything from like Jabra over there that costs you about 80 bucks, the one on the left, up to something like the AirPods Pro, which have noise canceling, and they're going to run you 250. Bose are also a great option, but they kind of really stretch our $1,500 ceiling there, because to get into the Bose, you're looking at probably starting at around 300. I love them. I've used them on planes for probably 20 years. Absolutely love them for that. Don't think they're really necessary in the context of phone and Zoom calls. I do Zoom calls all the time with my $120 AirPods, and they work fantastically. If you're in a situation where, or you prefer not to have something wedged into your ear, which I totally understand, then any of these speakerphone type products from Jabra work really well. Obviously, speakerphone isn't something you're going to use in the coffee shop unless you want to be really rude, but they also come in at around 100 to 120 to 200, give or take. The one that you see on the screen there is called the Speak 2, and it's 190 bucks. Some of them are wired, meaning you plug a USB cable into the computer or into the iPad again. And then we get into a bit of a complication because you may need an adapter for the iPad. Keep that in mind. But many of them are also Bluetooth, as this one is here. You can see the little blue dot on the left side next to the Bluetooth logo. So you wouldn't have anything that you would have to plug in. And if they're not plugged in, they're battery powered. So it is one more thing to charge. So do keep that in mind too. So a couple different options to go there. If you're doing the phone calls, Jabra's great, especially if you're on the Windows side of the fence. If you're on the Mac side of the fence and you don't need the speakerphone capabilities, I would probably default to one or the other type of the AirPods and go with that route, just because they work pretty darn well together. You're going to be picking up either paper that clients have sent you, or if you're going out to their location, they might have something that they want you to take with you. You getting some documentation for the work that you're doing. Couple of different ways that you can go about this. Obviously, there are great scanners out there. The ones on the left are not portable at all, although you can. They will sell somebody will on Amazon, I know because I bought one, will sell you a carry bag for either this Canon or the ScanSnap, but it is entirely electric. It requires you plug it in, and then you got to also plug it into the computer or do some configuration to make it worthwhile to really use on the go. Ones on the right-hand side are two ScanSnap models that come in respectively at $289 and $219. The top one opens up like most scanners that you've probably seen, and they have it has a 10-sheet feeder. So that would let you do up to 10 pages front and back as you go along. The bottom one, the IX100, does not have a feeder, so you're sitting there feeding one sheet at a time. So depends on what you're seeing with your clients as far as how much paper they have. The nice thing about one of the nice things about the IX100 is that it does everything off of the computer. So it's one cable, you plug it into the laptop, it's good to go. The IX1300 either is 2 cables into the laptop or 1 cable into the laptop and 1 cable into a wall outlet. So keep that in mind. And then the ones on the left, if you are in such a place where you work with clients where you've got that volume, they will do, I believe, like 50 sheets in the sheet feeder. So you could do, if they're double-sided, you can do 100 pages in one go. But again, they're not really designed for portability, but just want to make you aware of that. Of course, obviously another option there is that we're all carrying really, really good cameras in our pockets, in our purses, and we've already paid for the piece of hardware in which this camera lives. So that is another option. There are several different routes to go if you're thinking about this. I'm going to talk about a few iPhone apps because if you look at the statistics from the ABA and elsewhere, somewhere in the 80-ish, 82%-ish range of attorneys have iPhones as opposed to Android. So that's what I'm going to focus on. There are definitely Android alternatives out there to what I'm going to mention. It's just going to be a little bit of proof of this exercise is left to the reader or to the viewer, so that I'll tell you what to look for, and then you can go on a hunt and see what's out there. So Scanner Pro from a company called Readdle is an iPhone app that I've used for a long time. It obviously does the scanning portion. The difference between scanning with, say, one of these scanner apps and scanning with just like, say, use your camera and you take a picture is these apps are all very good about finding the 4 corners of the document. So it takes a picture of just that page. It understands that pages or documents might be more than a single page. So if you're using a camera and it goes into the camera roll, you've got picture page 1, picture page 2, picture page 3, kind of a pain. Whereas these let you build, page 1, page 2, page 3, and then out of that, you get a unified document as a PDF. It connects to all kinds of different storage mechanisms. So if you're using Google Drive, using Dropbox, OneDrive, all those sorts of things, it will let you file or save that document there. It does optical character recognition, which means if you want to search your folder or your drive for some motion for summary judgment, slip and fall, having turned the PDF into readable text, the computer can do that search for you. So a lot of nice things that you get with this app. I want to say it's like $8 or $10. I bought it so long ago. Definitely an option. If you are in the Adobe camp, you can use, and this one is, as I note there, this does work for iOS and it's on the Google Play Store as well. So this is definitely an option for the Android folks in the webinar. This one will save to net document. So if you're in a net documents-based firm, that saves you a lot of trouble. And obviously integrates with Adobe Acrobat. So if you're using Adobe Acrobat on your mobile device, this has some good integrations with that. And it's free. There are paid tiers that add different features, but the initial sort of out of the gate, you can give it a try for free. And then I do always want to mention, and this has only come about probably in the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of normal everyday apps have added the ability to scan documents. So you might not, depending on your needs and your frequency, you might not need to run out and buy Scanner Pro or download Adobe Scan or anything like that, because you'll find that, for example, if, again, on the Apple side of the fence, Apple Notes has a document scanner built in. You pull up Apple Notes and then you've got that little like icon bar right above the keyboard. One of those is a camera, and you hit the camera, it gives you the option of taking a picture of a couple different kinds. I think there are a couple different kind of picture options, and then there's down at the bottom of that list is scan a document, and it does the same thing that I just talked about. It does the let's find the 4 corners, and we're only going to take a picture of that, and we understand documents can be multiple pages, and we can make the end result a PDF. And it does, I think it does the OCRing as well. It certainly does within Notes, because I can search for text within the PDF. So I'm thinking that goes with the PDF. And that's just included as part of, you're using a recent version of iOS, you get that. And that output document that by default is saved into a note, you could copy and move to any other place that you wanted to store the document. Similarly, Dropbox has this built into their app. So if you're using Dropbox on your mobile device, you've got a document scanner built into that. You can take advantage of that, not have to spend any extra money. And then the third one there on the right is the Clio for Clients app. So if you are a Clio using law firm and you make available a portal for your clients to interact with you with their matter. It's essentially, if you haven't, go to the website, learn more about it, but it's essentially like an instant message chat with the client. So you can obviously have conversations back and forth like text messaging, except it stays within the Clio system, so it's more secure. You can also, on the client side, the client can scan a document and send it up to you, put it in that chat service, and then it loads into your Clio system on the back end. So you get a copy of that document that they uploaded. You can both see it in the chat. You can both read it. On your side, you can send them documents to read, but that doesn't involve the scanner portion. So that's another option. So if you have a practice management app that offers a mobile app, as many of them do, maybe even most of them, see if that mobile app has a scanner functionality. That would at least allow you, for the clients, to send you documents if they don't have another means of scanning. So several different options out there to turn paper when you're out and about, if you're meeting with a client on site, into a PDF or other type of electronic document, so you don't have to carry that paper back with you. So that's kind of rounds out the different hardware options that I see as kind of good ways to think about mobility. We talked about laptop, we talked about iPads, we talked about audio accessories. If you're someone who likes to use a mouse when you're out and about, there are tons of different options out there for smaller mobile mice, I guess, mobile mice. And you can use those. A lot of them are Bluetooth. I would recommend a Bluetooth one simply because it means that you don't have to remember to insert a tiny little dongle into the laptop, or maybe you take that out when you come home or you lose it. I would just go the Bluetooth route. The one I bought not too long ago was somewhere around $20, so not very expensive at all. It runs on AA battery, easy enough to find those all the places. And if you haven't tried it, you can use a mouse, an external mouse or trackpad with an iPad if you wanted to. I have one of those keyboards that has it built in, and I think in our picture that I showed us a while ago, that one also has the trackpad built in. So for that $250 keyboard, you would get a trackpad as well. So if you're somebody who doesn't particularly want to be touching the iPad screen for whatever reason, or wants more precision, trackpads and mice do work with iPads as well. The only other thing that I didn't really talk about, kind of because it's outside of the core idea of mobility, but I did mention earlier when we started, is that if you go the laptop route and you're, at the office or at home, wherever you work predominantly, you like having two screens and you like an external keyboard and you like a webcam like I'm using now, and you want this headset that plugs into a USB port and you got all these things, then the way to go is to make sure you get a laptop that has a Thunderbolt connection, either Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4. For our purposes, it's not going to matter. Most of the newer ones are Thunderbolt 4, and that's fine. That gives you a little bit of protection as far as obsolescence in the future. But the nice thing about that Thunderbolt connection is that if you want to connect it to two monitors and an external keyboard and mouse and headset and video camera, those can all plug into a Thunderbolt dock. And then from that dock, you have one cable that runs to the laptop. And that one cable carries all of the data associated with those monitors, with your wired Ethernet connection, with your video camera, et cetera, et cetera. And it carries the power to charge the laptop. And then when it's time to leave the office, time to leave home, wherever, to go out, be mobile, unplug that one cable, laptop's charged, stuff the laptop in your bag, out you go. When you come back, plug that one cable in, everything comes back to life. Those docks, or docking generally, used to be kind of a pain, poorly supported by operating systems, and the dock, it was specific to at least the line of laptops. It means you had to buy the Dell dock, sometimes the Dell Latitude dock, as opposed to the Dell, Optiplex or whatever dock. Now with Thunderbolt 4, you could buy a Dell dock, you could plug in monitors from, LG, you mix and match. And so these docks are somewhere around the 150 to 350, depending on what features you want in it, how many monitors you want it to support, how many USB ports you want it to have, et cetera, et cetera. But they're all interoperable. So for example, I have a Mac laptop. I use a CalDigit, CALDIGIT dock, and it was, I think, $250 probably about 4 years ago. It's Thunderbolt 3. I don't notice it. I don't feel the need to replace it with a 4. And that's where everything's plugged into. And so when I need to get up and go, I pull one cable and off I go. So $250 adds a ton of ease of access to traditional desktop accessories, but still lets you be super mobile. Like I said, CalDigit's a big one. Pluggable makes them. All the major manufacturers except Apple make them. So even though they work perfectly well with Apple, Apple does not have a branded Thunderbolt dock. Diving into software at this point, as I mentioned, it's nearly all gone subscription, all the big ones anyway. So if you're looking at Microsoft Office, you can still buy, I'm going to say essentially a boxed, or what they traditionally call a perpetual license of Office, meaning you buy Office 2021. I don't know if there's been a 2023 or 2024 yet, but certainly 2021. If you wanted to buy a copy of Office that you essentially own, to the extent that we own software, then you can buy it and it's yours and you're not paying any additional fees. What you miss out on in that is a couple of things. One is it might end up costing you more, especially if you're a solo, because you can get into a Microsoft 365 subscription for somewhere in like the $6 to $12 a month. Depending on what you're paying for that boxed, quote unquote, perpetual copy of Office, it might be more money. Additionally, there are features that they add throughout the course of Microsoft 365 that you may get later or not at all if you're on a perpetual copy of Office. So for example, if you're on Microsoft 365 and you saw commercials, I forget where they were running over the weekend, whatever sporting event I was watching, for Microsoft Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI tool that's built into Office and other products that they make. If you had a copy of Office 2019 that you bought, it may or may not, and I think at this point it does not, support these Copilot features. Whereas 365 would support the Copilot features, assuming you want to pay either $20 or $30 more a month to have those features. I think on our last webinar, we went through some of the Copilot stuff. So look on the website and see if you can find that webinar. It'll talk about some of the Copilot features. I'm not really sure at this point if they're worth $20 to $30 a month, but if you wanted to have that potential, you're more likely to have that potential if you're on the subscription version. Other software like Adobe Acrobat, for example, unless you're a volume customer, so you're purchasing, I don't know, however many dozen or 100 licenses of Adobe Acrobat, or you're the federal government or something like that, you're almost certainly going to be on a subscription for that. And that's about $20 a month or $240 a year. And unlike a lot of other products, there's not a price break if you pay in advance, or usually you get, a lot of times you get a month or so free in some cases, but not with Adobe, not with Microsoft. And then Google's a subscription to Google Workspace. If you're a fan of Gmail and Google Calendar and prefer that to the Outlook kind of experience, which I totally understand, then that's also a subscription basis, as are our various cloud offerings. So if you're in that Microsoft 365 subscription camp, you've got a terabyte per user of OneDrive space. Similarly with Google Drive, if you're in the Google Workspace camp, Dropbox, Box, everything else on the screen with the exception of iCloud or Files for iOS are situations where you're paying separately for the storage. So Dropbox, it does other things, but mostly people buy it for its great storage capabilities. And of the ones up here, in my experience, I find Dropbox to be the most reliable, the most bulletproof on syncing. I find iCloud to be probably the least reliable. And now we're talking somewhere in like the 99% versus like 89%. But if it's that one thing that you thought synced and it didn't, that's kind of a killer. Other things to consider about these, the one that people might not recognize, Tresort on there, is it's based in Europe, and its big claim to fame is that it is what one would call a trust no one setup, meaning that you define a password for your files, and Tresort does not know that password, and if they're served with a subpoena or a warrant, They can turn over the data, but without the password that only you know, that data is just gobbledygook. Whereas most of these other ones out there, with the exception of Box and NetDocuments, Box being a peculiar exception, and then NetDocuments based on what it is. But OneDrive, Google Drive, iCloud, Dropbox, they can turn over readable data unless you take some additional precautions. If they're served with a subpoena or warrant, they can turn over readable data. Now that data is encrypted, but it's encrypted with a password that the vendor knows, whereas Tresort would not know your password. And that means, of course, if you forget your password, you're out of luck. As we talked about, a lot of these have come in bundles with other products. So OneDrive, Google Drive, you almost certainly get those as part of purchasing a subscription to one of the respective products. Dropbox, I want to say, is around $100 a year or so, and you get like 2 terabytes. And I think like I said, I think it's the most bulletproof. And especially if you're going the iPad route, I would probably lean towards Dropbox as my solution, because it will integrate with the most other iPad apps. ShareFile I love because it makes it, I think it's the easiest to track whether people receive a document that you send them over email and that they download it, so you know that they got it. It also makes it pretty simple to request files from people. That's probably among the sort of solo small firm targeted ones. This ShareFile is probably one of the pricier options out there. Where you're talking, I want to say somewhere in the $20 a month, but double check their website. But they also understand the legal environment pretty well, so that would be a comfort to me if I were thinking about going that route. Bunch of other products out there that are cloud-based. I'm not going to go through each and every one here because, well, we simply don't have time. We talked about the storage ones. If you're thinking about cloud-based practice management, if you haven't pulled the trigger yet, or if you think you're small enough that you don't really need it, I would disagree, if for no other reason than if you ever bring someone on, it's far easier to start and build up and understand what's going on, rather than having 2 or 3 people, because the firm has grown, and then you got to figure out what all you are going to do. They're all pretty darn competitive. I put the 4 ones up there that people are, I think, most likely to have heard of. There are great comparison charts on the Bar website to take a look at, and we've got some more details and materials there about how do you decide what features are core to you and which way might you want to go. They're all pretty price competitive because it is a very active market. So you can get into each one of them, I believe, for around $40 a month. That gets you in sort of at the entry level tier. And then if you want additional features, you move up in price. And so if you want the best bang for your buck, you're usually looking at around, I want to say 50 to 70, depending on the product, $50 to $70 per person per month. One of the things to keep in mind is that certainly for Clio, which is, again, the one I know best, but doesn't mean it's the best fit for you, every member of the firm has to be on the same tier. So if you've got somebody who needs calendaring rules and other special features that are on, say, the $70 tier, but most people only need the $40 tier, everybody's got to be on the $70 tier, unfortunately. So something to keep in mind when you're looking at that you've got to balance. You kind of got to look and see what does the most sophisticated or what's the outlier case, what do they need, and then basically buy everyone in at that tier. Now, with all of these products on the left hand side there are plenty of permissions and restrictions that you can put in place, so that even though you buy the tier that says you get calendar rules and you get this advanced reporting and all this other stuff, but you don't want everyone to have access to reporting. And so if they don't need reporting, they don't want to be able, you don't want them to be able to see it and see that sort of thing. There are plenty of permission controls in there, so that even though you bought these extra capabilities, you don't necessarily need to expose them to every single user. I think a lot of times it's easiest to think in terms of ecosystems. So if I were in the Microsoft Windows camp, again, especially if I've got desktop software that probably requires Windows if it's legal specific, then I would think in terms of starting with OneDrive and Office 365, because you'll probably get the most bang for the buck out of that. Again, OneDrive at least in my experience, OneDrive works a heck of a lot better on Windows than it does on the Mac. So I have it on the Mac because a lot of other folks at the company use it. In fact, most of the company uses it, and it works okay, but it doesn't work as well with Dropbox on the Mac. But you would get the most benefit from sticking in that ecosystem. Similarly, and this is a little bit harder, but if you're in the Google Workspace ecosystem, it might be worth trying. Trying a Chromebook if you really want to. They're fairly inexpensive. I tried one a few months ago. I really hated the keyboard. It felt, but that was kind of a price, maybe a price thing, and not really a software thing, so to speak. But the biggest hurdle you're going to run into if you're sticking in the trying to stay in the Google camp for maximum integration and efficiency, cost savings, is that you're not going to have Microsoft Word. So if you exchange documents with folks regularly, which I think most attorneys do, even if it's just to send them to clients, then getting a document out of Google Docs into a Word format, send it off to the client makes changes, you get the document back. I feel like it's added stress and added aggravation that you really don't need. One of the ways that you can sort of work around this but you want to stay sort of in the kind of web-centric ecosystem, is that you can use the web-based versions of the Office applications, the Microsoft Office applications, and then you can also do collaborative editing in those applications. So as long as you're okay, if the primary goal is not to have to buy and install Office, the web-based versions of those programs have many features available for free. You just create a Microsoft account, don't have to pay Microsoft, and you can use many of the features of Microsoft Word online for free. So that might be an option around it. But otherwise, I feel like for the $6 or $10, or you buy a perpetual license of Office because you don't care about Copilot or when you get Copilot or if you get Copilot, that would be another alternative. But I don't feel like you're alleviating or saving yourself time and money by saying I'm going to use just Google Docs because it's already included. Now, for things that you're not sharing with folks, you could probably use Google Sheets or maybe Slides, although you might end up having to send them to people, in which case then you have to export them as a PowerPoint file. I was talking to a person that's working with us on some Clio optimization with our lawyers division, and she's been using she's got for the product a fairly sophisticated setup for document automation that she built in WordPerfect 20 years ago, and it still does what she needs, but she runs into that problem of sending files out to somebody because those not that many people outside of a small number of probably legal focused folks still use WordPerfect in any regular capacity. So she's got to save it as a Word document, send it out to these people, they make changes, she's got to bring it back in. And of course, one of the things that if you spend any time looking at the differences between Word and WordPerfect, you'll notice that their understanding or their approach to formatting is vastly different. So she's got, every time she saves it as a Word document, she's got to fix a bunch of stuff, send it out. And there's a lot of time to be saved by staying in the ecosystem, but maybe we think in this case, the ecosystem being the word processing product that most people use. And I would make that same approach and same conversation when we talk about iOS and we talk about macOS, that you get the best experience with iCloud on the Mac. There are, if you are all in on the personal side on Apple, but at work or at the firm, you're using Windows, which would be pretty normal. There is an iCloud for Windows program. So you go to the Microsoft store and you search for it, or you can download it, I think, from the Apple website. And so it would kind of give you access to the iCloud drive, and it would give you access to your saved passwords and other things associated with iCloud. The experience is passable. I think it's not as good as it would be if you were all Mac, but in some cases, particularly that situation, it's not terribly likely that you're going to be all Mac. So that's kind of a workaround if you're in that mobile ecosystem, but you want to have access to some stuff on Windows. And again, same thing with iWork that I would say about the Google sort of productivity products that you can use. Pages, it's nice, it's wonderful, I've used it. You can use Numbers, you can use Keynote. Keynote's the one I like best of the three, frankly. But the more you have to exchange files with other people, the more you're just going to kind of butt heads on having to take extra steps to look at that. The nice thing about iWork and iCloud Files is that it is free with once you're in the Apple ecosystem. You may end up having to buy more space if you're going to stay in iCloud, because I think you start out with 5 gigabytes, which isn't a whole lot anymore. They announced it as 5 gigabytes in 2011, when 5 gigabytes might have been a decent amount, and then we've had 13 intervening years. So you get all this stuff to start for free, which is a nice thing, but it's probably not the best solution. So you may end up pairing this with at least a perpetual license of Office for the Mac, which I often see on sale for somewhere in like the 120 range. So it wouldn't be terribly expensive and would probably still keep us under that $1,500 cap. No matter which way you go with these word processors, though, they all will sync up to the cloud. You can share documents through all of them. You can even, question I got a while back, you can even share documents from Pages with people who don't use Apple products. So in the way it works, they do have to have an iCloud or an Apple ID, and they go log in, and there's a Pages for the web in the same way there's a Microsoft Word for the web, or you access Google Docs on the web, you can do that. So any one of these three, they sync up to the cloud. You can share documents with people that are either within the firm or external parties. They all do track changes. They all reconcile changes. So those core capabilities, they're all right there and available, no matter which of the three you go with. But like I said, I expect most of us will end up having at least Microsoft Word, simply for a time saving, if nothing else. If you don't like the idea of paying for Acrobat $20 a month as your on-the-go product, which of course it also gets you some other nice things. It gets you the desktop Acrobat. It also gets you Adobe Sign, so you can send e-signing documents very straightforward and very easily. But if you don't want to pay that $240 a year, there are, again, perpetually licensed products. On the left-hand side, you'll see Foxit, Kofax, and then I believe PDF Docs changed its name to Nuance, I think, or they were bought or merged. If you want to buy the perpetually licensed versions, you're looking somewhere at the 120 to 200 range, depending on the features that you need. When I say Adobe Acrobat's going to cost you $20 per person per month, that's for the advanced version, and the advanced version includes two things that are important to lawyers, at least one of which I know is essential to lawyers. The first thing it includes is Bates numbering. So if you do a lot of electronic discovery, you might want that. Second thing is redaction, and courts are tightening down on redaction. We've been working with some folks in Missouri over the last year and a half or so. Last June, so a year ago, they went live with essentially making court records available over the internet to the general public. In the past, records were available to the general public, but John or Jane or whomever had to go down to the courthouse and use computers and look at them there. They were publicly available, but they were not readily available. June or July 1st, I think, of last year, open the floodgates, and you can go online to a county court in Missouri and look at all the filings, which made redaction, even though it was previously required, super important starting last July. And redaction is what is included, one of those two features included with Adobe Acrobat Pro for $20 a month that you do not get an Adobe Acrobat Standard for $12 or $13 a month. So that's the big dividing line. The products that come in at about the 120, 130 range for the perpetual licenses also likely do not have redaction, whereas the ones that come in at about the 180-ish range probably do. That's usually the dividing line. So if you see these products, and Foxit, for example, has a standard and a pro version, redaction's often one of the features that's only in the pro version. On the Mac side of the fence, again, there are a couple of products out there to think about. One, the bottom right there is Preview. You get this for free with every Mac out there, and it does redaction. It's included with the operating system. It's no additional cost. So you can do redaction through that built-in program. The other option, if you want something a little bit fancier and also has a mobile component. So Preview doesn't have a mobile component. Obviously, if you're using an iPhone, you know you can open and view a PDF, but there's no preview redaction type thing or anything like that. There's no preview app for the iPhone. The top right one there is PDF Expert, which is also from Riaddle. We talked about Riaddle when I mentioned Scanner Pro a while back. And it's, I want to say, either $130 once, or you can pay, I believe, $80 a year as part of, or maybe it's 50, I think it's $50 a year on a subscription. And it does include redaction. And so that's a way to go on the Mac side of the fence. You've got a couple of options. One's free, one is costs $80, but there's also a nice mobile component to it. My default choice is usually Adobe Acrobat Pro, simply because it's interface and feature identical between Windows and Mac. So if you learn how to do it on one, it's going to be the same way on the other. And so especially if you have a bring your own device practice, or again, we're looking at $1,500 and you and a friend are starting up a practice and you're trying to save money and want to use a Windows person, want to use a Mac person, Adobe is going to look the same and work the same no matter who's got it. So you only write up one set of materials on here's how you redact and file in the court. So that's what I would default to. But again, if you're looking to save a little bit of money, Perpetual on the Windows side of the fence on the left there, I would probably start with Foxit, which is going to run you $180 once, or you can subscribe annually. You can subscribe to all of these, but particularly Foxit and Kofax are good deals if you're looking on that Perpetual side, on the Windows practice side. A few other things to think about when we're out and about to kind of round us out. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but hopefully if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll address them as we go along. What other kinds of stuff would you want when you're out and about practicing? You might need to know dates, contacts, some case information, and some case research. Dates and contacts, certainly dates, I'm thinking we're probably syncing to our mobile phone or our smartphone. Contacts are a little bit different because I generally don't recommend that my clients sync all of the contacts they have in a practice management system down to their mobile device or to Outlook or to whatever they're using, simply because in a lot of cases, you've got thousands of contacts in a practice management system. People that you might have only reached out to once, or people, depending on how you set it up, maybe you're tracking executors or healthcare agents or other things like beneficiaries maybe, and these are people that you might never ever have to contact, and so there's probably no need for them to be cluttering up your contacts list on your mobile device. Obviously, big fan of syncing dates. Contacts, I could go either way, especially if your practice management app or practice management program has a mobile app that lets you take a look through it and look at contacts. That's probably a good way to go. And then case information, case research, we'll talk about a couple different options out there. So a few storage options that you can think about. Using a sync service, Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, et cetera, et cetera. You could do a connected NAS. I skipped the slides on that for this presentation. If you have questions about using network attached storage remotely, I'm happy to answer those. Shoot me an email. The reason I skipped NAS for our conversation is because the empty box that starts this process is going to run you about $300 or $400. Then you got to fill it with hard drives that are going to run you $100 or more each. So out of the gate, you're looking at $600 or so to start. So a little too rich for $1,500, but definitely an option, particularly if you don't want to store any of your data for any reason in any encryption format in the cloud. Shoot me an email and we can talk about network attached storage. Shared notebook. There are tons of products out there that do notebooks. OneNote's an obvious one. It's free, even if you're not a Microsoft 365 subscriber. Web hosted case management. We've knocked that back and forth a few times today. A web aware document management system. NetDocs and iManage would be the big players in here. Again, if you're interested in going a full document management system route, shoot me an email. I'm happy to have a conversation on the side about it. But for these, especially for small firms, there's a lot of overhead relative to the potential gain. So if you're a 3-person, 4-person shop, I'm not sure I would do a document management system. And you're looking at around $70 per person per month and up for those kinds of things. Shared calendars and shared contacts. Couple things to think about when we're talking about case management information, particularly, especially if you wanted to share it with anyone outside the firm. A lot of these products have client portals now. Some of them are really good. Clio actually has two, which makes it a little bit confusing. They have one for sharing information with other internal facing people involved in the case. Internal might not be the right word, but like an expert witness or an outside consultant or somebody that's helping you prep a video or slides for the courtroom presentation. And that's the Clio for co-counsel portal. So obviously co-counsel and other sorts of folks like that. And then there's what we talked about earlier, which is the Clio for clients side, which is that web app or that web and mobile app that lets you do the scanning and some other things. So just about every one of these web-based practice managements has not only a client portal that you can give clients access to, but they oftentimes have apps so you can look up your contacts instead of polluting your address book. You can also, a lot of times, even if they don't have an app, they'll have a mobile-friendly web interface. So you pull it up on an iPad or an iPhone. It's not, pinch and zoom all over the place to see what's going on. They usually resizes pretty well for that. Couple last things to close us out on the hardware side, because that's kind of where I geek out. If you're on the Mac side of the fence and you have an iPad and you want a second screen when you're out and about working with clients or the coffee shop, the library, wherever you like to go, that's built into Mac OS. So if assuming both the iPad and the Mac are on the same Apple ID, then use this sidecar feature, kind of a nice name, and it's built in again, and your iPad turns into a second screen for your Mac. Makes it pretty handy. If you're not on the Mac side, or you're like I am, where I have a work Mac that's logged into Apple ID A and a personal iPad that's logged into my personal Apple ID, then Sidecar doesn't work for me, and I've got to use something like Duet. And Duet works with all manner of mix and match combinations. So you could have a Mac and a Chromebook, and the Chromebook's going to be your second display. You could have a Windows machine and an Android tablet. You could have a Windows machine and an iPad that are not otherwise associated. It works very well. When I originally bought it many years ago, it was $10 once. Now they are, like everybody else, into the subscription game, and I want to say it's $30 or $40 a year. And you only need the base tier, unless you're doing something really ridiculous. The base tier is going to let you share the screen, and then if you go up tiers, you can do things that have to do with drawing, and like you can make the pencil, your Apple Pencil, show up on your Windows screen and other fancy things you don't really need. So $30 to $40 a year, I believe it is. And a couple other things just to close this out. I do always like to mention, and not a lot of folks know this, that if you go the iPad route, you can do split screens for many apps these days. And in some cases, you can even do split screens where you have the two apps, like Word will support this. You could have a Word document on the left side of the screen, a Word document on the right side of the screen. In this example, I have GoodNotes on the left side of the screen. I am left-handed. And I have a book open on the right-hand side of the screen. And so I could be taking notes on what's in the book. If obviously you could have a PDF up there, you could have a pleading up there, and you could be taking notes. So if you haven't experimented with the split screen stuff that the iPad will do, and even if you just have an iPad and you're not going for the full mobility of only the iPad, this is definitely worth a shot to take a look at. I find it pretty helpful. And as you can see, that is a really, really good rendition of my handwriting. So if you haven't tried an Apple Pencil, it might be worth it as well. Another tool I like to mention, and I'll just close this out with this, is that we talked about, can your iPad be mobile? Everything. Think about, if there's something that you need to access on a traditional computer and you want to be able to see that, there are different remote access apps that are out there. The one I use is called Screens, but there's TeamViewer. There's a bunch of them out there. Usually there's subscription, but just to prove to you that I can do that, I am in this screenshot. I'm on an iPad, which is why I've got those black bars top and bottom, but I am seeing my traditional Mac desktop. So definitely an option if you want to kind of mix and match on what you're carrying with you. And so I'll close it out with that and turn it back over to Paul.
Hey, Jake, thank you, Jeff. We appreciate it. Great information as always. Next PMA webinar that we're going to be hosting will be on September the 25th. It'll be about how to help you manage your workload better, all about email management. So look on our website, va.org, register for that, and we look forward to seeing you then. Jeff, thank you again. Take a look at the PMA pages on the VBA website. Some great information there. And we appreciate you being with us and have a great afternoon. Thank you.